For 11 months, there was a small device running in the guest room of my in-laws' house. I didn't know it was there. My husband didn't know it was there. Even their own son, the man I had built a life with, had no idea that every single time we visited with our daughter, every conversation, every moment, every afternoon was being recorded. I found out the way you find out about most betrayals, not through confrontation, not through confession, but through a legal document I wasn't supposed to see yet. Their attorney submitted the recordings as evidence in a family court filing, 11 months of footage, hundreds of hours, and they were certain, absolutely certain, that somewhere in all of that, they had what they needed to take my daughter from me. The judge watched 4 hours of it, and then she looked up from her notes, set her pen down on the bench, and asked their attorney, very quietly, if he would like to reconsider his strategy before she responded. This is that story, and I want to tell it to you slowly and carefully the way it actually happened, because the truth of it is something I think a lot of women need to hear. My name doesn't matter for this story. What matters is that I was 31 years old, I had a 4-year-old daughter named Lily, and I had been married to a man named Daniel for 6 years. Daniel is a good man. I want to say that clearly, because this story is not about him. He didn't know what his parents were doing. When he found out, he was devastated in a way I had never seen before. Not angry, not defensive, just quietly, completely devastated. His parents, Richard and Lorraine, had always been a particular kind of difficult. Not explosive, not cruel in obvious ways. They were the kind of difficult that hides inside helpfulness. The kind that offers to babysit and then uses the babysitting as leverage. The kind that says, we just want to be involved, until you realize that what they mean by involved is in control. From the moment Lily was born, there had been a low, steady current of tension between me and Lorraine. She questioned my choices, my feeding decisions, my sleep schedule, the preschool I chose, the way I handled tantrums. Nothing I did was quite right. Nothing was quite enough. And for years, I did what a lot of women do. I kept the peace. I smiled. I showed up. I handed my daughter over for Sunday visits and sat at their dinner table and absorbed the weight of someone else's disapproval, because I told myself it was worth it for the sake of the family. What I didn't know was that while I was doing all of that, while I was choosing patience over conflict, over and over again, they were building a case. It started, as far as I can piece together, about a year before any of this came to light. Lorraine had gotten it into her head, and I don't know exactly where this idea came from, whether it was something a friend said, or something she read, or something she had simply convinced herself of over years of watching me and finding me wanting, that I was not a fit mother. Not that I was a bad person, not that I was cruel or neglectful, just that I was not what she believed Lily deserved, that I was too distracted, too independent, too focused on my own life, too unwilling to do things the way Lorraine thought they should be done. And somewhere along the way, she decided she was going to do something about it. She started with a camera, a small recording device, no bigger than a thumb drive, tucked into the bookshelf in the guest room where Lily would sometimes play while the adults talked. The guest room where I would sit with my daughter and read to her, or build things with her, or just let her show me whatever she'd found interesting that week. Lorraine positioned it to capture the room, and then she waited. For 11 months she waited, collecting footage, building what she believed was a picture of my inadequacy as a parent. And during all of that time, I kept showing up, every Sunday, smiling, keeping the peace, handing my daughter over, sitting at that dinner table. I had no idea. The first I learned of any of it was when our family attorney called me on a Tuesday afternoon and said she needed me to come in as soon as possible, that Daniel's parents had filed a petition for grandparental rights, and that they had submitted supporting documentation that included audio and video recordings made in their home. I remember sitting in my car in the parking garage after that call for a long time, just breathing. 11 months. They had spent 11 months recording my family inside their own house, and then handed that footage to a lawyer to use against me. And the thing that I kept coming back to, the thing that I couldn't stop turning over in my mind, was this. I had been in that room. I knew what had happened in that room. I knew how I had behaved in that room every single time, and I was not afraid of what the footage showed. I want to pause here and tell you something that I think is important, because I know what you might be thinking. You might be thinking, why didn't you fight back? Why didn't you refuse to go there anymore? Why didn't you confront Lorraine the moment you found the device, or lawyer up earlier, or draw a harder line? And the honest answer is that I didn't know there was a device. I had no idea. I thought I was just dealing with a difficult mother-in-law, the garden variety kind that a lot of women navigate quietly because the alternative is blowing up the family. But here's the thing I've thought about a lot since all of this happened. My not knowing turned out to be a kind of protection. Because I had nothing to perform, I had no awareness of an audience. Every time I sat in that guest room with Lily, I was just being her mother, reading to her because she loved books, letting her climb into my lap when she got tired, talking to her the way you talk to a small person who is becoming a bigger person right in front of your eyes, with attention and patience, and the particular kind of love that doesn't need anyone watching to be real. I wasn't performing goodness. I was just being good, or trying to be, the way all of us try, imperfectly, and on hard days, and sometimes when we're tired and distracted and doing our best anyway. Lorraine had positioned a camera expecting to catch something, expecting to find the thing she had already decided was there. And instead, for 11 months, the camera just watched me be Lily's mother. There's a lesson in that, and I'll come back to it at the end. But for now, I want to keep telling you what happened. Daniel and I met with our attorney, a woman I will call Claire, who was composed and precise and exactly the kind of person you want in your corner when things get serious. She walked us through the petition. She explained what Richard and Lorraine were asking for, which was regular formalized visitation rights with the legal weight of a court order behind them. And then she told us she had reviewed a portion of the footage that had been submitted. I asked her what she saw. She looked at me for a moment before she answered, and then she said, "A very patient mother." The hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks out. During those 6 weeks, I did something that I think surprised people who knew what was happening. I didn't rage. I didn't panic. I didn't flood social media or call every family member to get ahead of the story. I didn't go to Lorraine's house and demand answers. I went quiet, and I went to work. Claire told us that the recordings, while invasive and ethically troubling, had been made in a private residence that Richard and Lorraine owned, and that the legal landscape around recording in one's own home, while complicated, meant we couldn't guarantee they'd be thrown out. What we could do was let them stand, let the court watch them, and let the footage speak for itself. So that became the strategy. Not to fight the evidence, to let the evidence fight for us. I also want to tell you what Daniel did during those 6 weeks, because it matters. He called his parents, once. He didn't yell, he didn't threaten. He told them, very calmly, that he was aware of what they had done, that he was deeply hurt, and that he needed them to understand, whatever happened in that courtroom, that they had fundamentally changed his relationship with them, not ended it, changed it. And that rebuilding it, if it was ever possible, would start with honesty. Lorraine cried. Richard said they had done what they had to do because they were worried about Lily. Daniel listened. And then he came home, and he sat in the kitchen for a very long time, and I made him tea, and we didn't talk much. There wasn't much to say. The weeks passed. Lorraine, from what we understood through family channels, was confident. She had 11 months of footage. She had an attorney. She had a story she had told herself for years, and now she was going to tell it to a judge. What she didn't fully reckon with was that the story the footage actually told was not the one she had been writing in her head. The hearing room was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling, fluorescent light. The kind of room that makes everything feel more serious, just by being exactly what it is. Richard and Lorraine sat at a table across from us with their attorney, a man I'll call Mr. Hess. He was prepared. He had a summary of the footage, timestamps. He had, I think, genuinely believed in his case. The judge, a woman in her 50s with the particular stillness of someone who has heard everything, reviewed the submissions before we came in. She had watched approximately 4 hours of the footage her clerk had flagged as most relevant to the petition. Mr. Hess presented the grandparents' case first. He talked about the importance of the grandparent-grandchild relationship. He talked about Lorraine's concerns. He referenced several moments from the footage where, in his framing, I appeared distracted or disengaged. The judge let him finish. Then she asked to reference specific timestamps, and one by one, she walked through them. The moment I appeared distracted turned out to be a clip of me sitting on the floor with Lily, both of us looking at the same book, me pointing at something on the page, while Lily leaned against my arm. I had glanced up at the doorway, perhaps hearing something, perhaps just a momentary pause, and then immediately turned back to my daughter. That was the distraction. The judge moved to the next timestamp, then the next. There was a clip Lorraine's attorney had flagged as showing me being dismissive of Lily. It was a clip of Lily asking for a snack. I had said, very calmly, "In a few minutes, sweetheart, we're going to finish this puzzle first." Lily had accepted this without upset. We finished the puzzle. I got the snack. That was the dismissiveness. Clip after clip unfolded in this room, and with each one, the picture that emerged was not the picture Lorraine had been building in her mind for years. It was just a mother, doing ordinary things, in or dinery moments, with patience and warmth and the quiet, unremarkable love of someone who shows up the same way whether or not she thinks anyone is watching. It was around the 4th hour of footage, a clip of me reading to Lily, doing all the voices, making her laugh, that the judge set her pen down. She looked up, and she asked Mr. Hess, very quietly, whether he would like to reconsider his evidentiary strategy before she issued her response to the petition. There was a long silence in that room. Mr. Hess asked for a brief recess to consult with his clients. They came back 20 minutes later and withdrew the footage as supporting evidence. It didn't matter. The judge had already seen it, and she had already decided what she thought. The petition was denied. The judge's ruling was careful and measured. She acknowledged the value of extended family relationships and encouraged ongoing connection, but found no basis in the submitted evidence for formalizing visitation rights against the parents' wishes. She also made a comment, not binding but notable, about the manner in which the recordings had been obtained, and suggested that if the family intended to pursue any future legal action, they might reflect carefully on whether their methods were serving the relationship they claimed to want to protect. I don't know exactly how Richard and Lorraine received that comment. I wasn't looking at them when it was delivered. I was looking at my hands in my lap. Outside the courthouse, Daniel held my hand, and we didn't say anything for a while. Eventually, he said, "I'm sorry." I told him he didn't have to be sorry for something he didn't do. He said he was sorry anyway, for not seeing it sooner, for not drawing harder lines earlier, for the years of Sunday dinners where he had asked me to keep the peace. That apology mattered to me more than the ruling. The relationship with his parents changed after that. It didn't end. They are Lily's grandparents, and Lily loves them, and that matters. But it changed. There are different rules now, different expectations. And for the first time in 6 years, those rules were set by Daniel and by me. Not managed around, not softened, just clearly stated and held. Lorraine has never directly apologized to me. She sent a card about 3 months later that said she hoped we could move forward. I kept it. I didn't respond right away. I'm still deciding what I want to say. I've thought a lot about what this whole experience taught me. Not just about Lorraine, or about family court, or about the particular cruelty of being watched without your knowledge. I've thought about what it means that my best defense was simply being myself. There's something almost unbearably simple about that. Lorraine spent 11 months, and God knows how much money and energy and conviction trying to build a case. And the case she built was a record of me being a good enough mother on ordinary days. She handed a judge the evidence that disproved her own argument. The people who set out to expose us often reveal themselves instead. I've seen this pattern so many times in the stories I've heard from other women. The in-law who spreads rumors and gets caught in the lie. The family member who schemes for inheritance and uncovers their own misconduct. The woman who builds a trap and falls into it. Truth doesn't need a stage. It just needs time. The second thing I learned is about documentation. Not in a paranoid way. I'm not saying you should record every conversation you have with difficult family members. But I am saying, be the person who keeps records. Who sends emails instead of texts when something important needs to be said. Who dates things and saves things and trusts her own clarity of mind enough to write it down. Not because you're planning for a fight, but because you already know who you are, and if anyone ever questions it, you want to be ready. And the third thing, the most important one, is about what it actually means to keep your character when someone is trying to strip it from you. Lorraine tried to define me. She had a version of me that she believed in, that she had built and maintained and planned to present to a courtroom. And the reason it fell apart was not because I was strategic. It was because every day, in ordinary moments, in guest rooms, over puzzles and picture books and snack negotiations, I was just exactly who I am. Yo, you cannot fabricate integrity over 11 months of secret footage. You can only show it. If you're watching this and you're in the middle of something like this, if you're in a family situation where someone is trying to define you or undermine you, or build a case against you out of their own fear or need for control, I want you to hear this. Keep going. Keep being exactly who you are. Not for the cameras, not for the court, not for the family members who are watching and forming opinions. For yourself, for your kids, for the version of your life that exists on the other side of this. The truth doesn't need your help to find its way to the surface. It just needs time, and your patience, and your willingness to keep showing up as yourself. If this story resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it with someone who might need to hear it today. And if you want more stories like this, stories about women who endure and wait, and ultimately watch the truth do the work they refuse to do in anger, then subscribe, because there are so many more of these stories to tell. And leave me a comment. Tell me if you've been in a situation where patience turned out to be your strongest strategy. I read every single one. I'll see you in the next story.